What's up guys, it's USA Specialist, and Battlefield 2042's most recent season may have been its best, but that doesn't seem to matter.
Soldiers with no country left to fight
for. The U.S. and Russia are both being accused of fielding armed no-pats in an escalating fight over vital resources.
Battlefield 2042 Season 5 was in many ways unexpected, but also formulaic and boring. The fifth entry in the game's bare-bones live service, called New Dawn, wanted to act as a great reprisal of the franchise, but instead landed with a thud as the game's formulaic delivery of one new map, a few new guns, and a remaster of Hourglass ultimately weren't enough to keep the player base around. In fact, according to Steam charts, Season 5 has witnessed some of the worst player fall-off since release. Something that's rather a shame because Season 5, while repetitive, is the most polished, diverse, and well-tuned season we have yet to get. A great little chunk of content that, while fun, was ultimately far too little, far too late. So in today's video, let's talk Battlefield's most recent season, New Dawn. Now, simply put, New Dawn is the best this game has ever been. After 2 years of content, fixes, and tweaking, Battlefield 2042 is a reasonably good game, just far too late with far too many cut corners. And New Dawn is perhaps the best this game's live service has ever been, where it introduced a new map that feels very Battlefield 4, reworked all the portal weapons to help add diversity, updated one of the worst maps in franchise history, and brought in an event with a new fan-favorite mode. Season 5 has done a lot of heavy lifting, and sadly, it's at the expense of Seasons 1 through 4, where the devs spent most of their time fixing the game and trying to figure out what players actually wanted. It's been almost exactly 2 years now, and Season 5 is finally feeling like a game that could actually call itself Battlefield. It has the classic guns, a more war-torn aesthetic, a larger sandbox, a bigger roster of vehicles, and has fixed most of the bugs. As I said in a prior video, we are now nearing a point where Battlefield 2042 is pretty much done. The game will never get a campaign, a new third mode, or some massive revival. So Season 5 sort of represents the best this game will ever be, and all things considered, it's a rather fun multiplayer experience, but for me personally, New Dawn did get a few things wrong. One of the bigger issues I have with New Dawn is how it tried so hard to drip feed content. I understand things like portal weapon changes and map updates take time, but it's very clear that DICE has been trying very hard to create a trail of breadcrumbs to keep players invested, but that's clearly not working. During the beginning of Season 4, Steam saw a spike of around 24,000 players per day, which dropped to an average of 18,000 players per day as the season went on. Season 5 also saw a spike of around 21,000 players per day, but that number has now dropped to around 8,000 players per day, which is half of Season 4's lowest point. Ultimately, while many of Season 5's additions are great, fans are tired of waiting on a 2-year-old game to drip feed them content that should have been here day one. Hourglass has been and still is the worst map in the game. The seasonal event felt more underwhelming than ever, and balancing weapons shouldn't be considered content. Season 5 showed that DICE's whole system of live service and ongoing production is totally backwards, where EA sells a player a broken game, and then they repair it like that's considered the content, something that annoys me to my core and brings me to my last point. New Dawn in many ways is great. Reclaimed is a nostalgic trip back to Battlefield 4, portal weapons are now super fun, and the Battle Pass is fair as usual. So as a standalone moment in time, supported by all the hard work DICE has already put in, New Dawn is a rather fine season. However, Season 5 shows how weak Battlefield's live service model is. Season 5 was expected to be a turning point, a new dawn after 4 seasons and 1 year of support had finally ended. We expected the devs to see a good base game, ripe for additions, and then watch them go insane. Perhaps new modes, new co-op missions, a new battle pass structure, progression system, prestiges, new earnable cosmetics, more maps than ever, a throwback to something like Operation Metro, or a huge map bundle. But instead, DICE decided to be predictable, slow, and just barely meet our low expectations. Season 5 showed that DICE is happy being predictable and mediocre. They know what they need to do, improve the game a reasonable amount, and then buy time with updates and fixes that should have been here years ago. New Dawn in many ways is the best this game ever has been or ever will be. But that's because EA and DICE are content to not push any boundaries and instead deliver a satisfying, if anything, well overdue series of updates years later than expected, just in time to send off the majority of the community with a nice update before most players move on to new games with the holiday season. New Dawn is a rather good standalone update, but it fell victim to the machine that is EA and DICE. A fun return to form in many ways that my friends will never experience because at this point, they've had Battlefield 2042 uninstalled for months. But guys, tell me in the comments below, what season do you think is best? And for everything else, stay tuned and subscribe. And as always, thank you guys for watching.